over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star. She opened the earth, walking with blood-soaked feet. She challenged the whip, the gun, the knife. She challenged the fire, pulled from the bodies of slaves, made into laws, prisons, and courts.
Well, good afternoon. And as always, folks, welcome back. Thank you all so much for joining me today. The Washington Post reports, judge blocks Trump from deploying troops in Illinois for now. Officials in Oregon and Illinois had challenged the Trump administration's push to dispatch the National Guard in both states. This while just a week after James Comey is indicted, Justice Department, or what seems now to have become the Department of Injustice, indicts New York Attorney General Letitia James in a case in the Eastern District of Virginia that career prosecutors had turned down for lack of evidence. Folks, as the Trump whisperer Steve Bannon told us that the Trump administration's focus would be the deconstruction of the administrative state, and Russell Vogt tells us that we're in a post-constitutional America, what are the people to do as an American president who swore to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States attacks the very foundation of the Republic and its democracy? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. With each show, my guests and I provide insight and analysis into current events and the broader historical context in which most of these events take place. I want to quickly touch on a couple of today's headlines. Well, we've got good news and we've got bad news. The good news is Trump did not win the Nobel Prize for Peace. The bad news is it was awarded to Venezuela's Maria Corina Machado. CNN reports, now listen to this, Machado received the accolade for tirelessly promoting democratic rights in Venezuela and for, quote, her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy, end quote. And that's from the Norwegian Nobel Committee. They said that today in announcing her award. Let me be as clear and succinct on this one as I can be. That's a flat out lie. She's not some crusader rabbit for democracy in Venezuela. She's the designated U.S. operative for regime change in Venezuela. Contrary to the dominant narrative, Maduro is the democratically elected president of Venezuela. There's no dictatorship here. He was democratically elected in what the Carter Foundation once called the freest and fairest elections in the Carter Center, the freest and fairest elections in the world. Contrary to the dominant narrative, she's the she followed the attempt by the U.S. to impose Juan Guaido on the people of Venezuela as the president, and she failed. She stepped into the lurch, but like Guaido, was weighed in the balance and found wanting. This is another demonstration of the duplicitous nature. This also demonstrates the duplicitous nature of President Obama. As it's been reported, he congratulates her for her, quote, courageous struggle to bring democracy to Venezuela. This is a fraud. She is an agent of regime change. And for Barack Obama to say anything other than that, he's lying to you too. Boy. In fact, Machado is in Venezuela what Victoria Nuland turned out to be in Ukraine. The difference is Machado failed in Venezuela. The Venezuelan Supreme Court has banned her for 15 years from running for office, not because the Supreme Court is under the thumb and control of this dictator, Nicolas Maduro. She was involved in the corruption plot orchestrated by Juan Guaido. She was found to be representing the interests of foreign entities against the interest of the country of Venezuela. I think people call that treason. All right. With that being said, on today's episode, the issue before us is, again, the Washington Post reports a judge has blocked Donald Trump from deploying troops in Illinois for now. Officials in Oregon and Illinois had challenged the administration's push to dispatch National Guard troops in both states. Judge April M. Perry said the Trump administration had not established that sending in troops over the governor's objection was legally justified. And of course, the government is appealing. Let's talk to my guest. He's associate professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara, was the U.S. vice presidential candidate for the Green Party in 2024, and is a California gubernatorial candidate of the Green Party in 2025. Dr. Bilal Butch Ware, as always, my brother, welcome back.
Good to be back with you, my brother, and thank you for that outstanding setup. We're seeing the collapse of liberal institutions all across the globe, so there it is.
Well, before we get to the troops in American cities, let's start with the broader issue. As I mentioned, as a Trump whisperer, Steve Bannon told us that the Trump administration's focus would be the deconstruction of the administrative state. Russell Vogt tells us that we're in a post-constitutional America. What are the people to do as an American president who swore to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States is attacking the very foundation of the republic and its democracy? Unless you want to first comment on the Nobel Prize issue, we'll go where you want to go.
Yeah. I mean, I'll comment briefly on the Nobel Prize issue, but the two pieces are connected as far as I'm concerned. That's what I meant to say when I said we're witnessing the collapse of all of these liberal institutions. I mean, by that I mean the institutions of liberal democracy and that are associated with it. So, in addition to your brilliant setup regarding Machado, let's also not forget that she's a hardcore Zionist that has supported the idea of moving Venezuela's embassy to Tel Aviv, echoing what the Trump administration has already done. She's praised Benjamin Netanyahu, praised the Likud party, Netanyahu's right-wing government, in the midst of an ongoing genocide that is as heinous as anything that we've ever seen. And that ceasefire, supposedly announced ceasefire, has already been, violated to the surprise of no serious observer. And Obama co-signing for that nonsense and regime change foolishness is no surprise in any way. he sullied that Nobel Prize, and I hate to break it to my people, but Obama dropped 72 bombs a day during his presidency. Full knowledge of and approval of drone strikes that were in Yemen that were routinely producing at least a third civilian casualties, including women and children in each one. So that Nobel Peace Prize hasn't been worth the paper that it's been printed on for a long time. And we could wipe our backsides with it the same way that Trump is wiping his backside with the Constitution. How's that for a segue?
Well, how's that for a segue? Emily Schrader says the Nobel Peace Prize is still a high honor. Emily, it has become an abomination because it has gone from actually recognizing those who are promoting and sacrificing in the name and for peace to a political discussion, because this hasn't been written that I can see, but Dr. Ware, help me out if I'm wrong here. I see this as really the rationale to back Trump's anticipated move to attack Venezuela.
He anticipated he's already bombing Venezuelan civilians, off the coast, and this is all about a move to try to secure access to Venezuela's oil resources. And that's what I meant when I said we're witnessing the collapse of these liberal democratic institutions in real time, because essentially the Nobel Prize is now being used as a political arm of American imperialism. And that was also the case when Barack Hussein Obama was awarded that Nobel Prize in the midst of, carrying out multiple, genocidal wars. Let's not forget, especially for the melanated and African descended in the crowd, that Barack Obama gave the go-ahead, the green light for the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, which led to the complete and total collapse of Libyan state and civil society, to the point where there is actually now a live African slave trade in Libya. We have American destabilization and empire to thank for that. And now we see the Nobel Prize being awarded to another person that, as you rightly characterized, is simply an agent of U.S. imperialism and regime change in a place where the U.S. wants access to resources.
And that answers Emily's question. Then why do people of the world still accept the award? Emily, just because CNN and MSNBC and the rest of them hail this thing as for what it once was, doesn't mean that the people of the world recognize it as such. And there's a lot of money that comes with it as well. So, hey, if they awarded it to me, I might think about getting my tuxedo out the closet and taking my way, because it ain't a bad check. Now, that doesn't mean I can be bought. I can be rented, but I can't be bought. Anyway,
I'm gonna tell you this right now. With God as my witness, hand me a wet food stamp before you hand me that Nobel Prize.
I understand. I understand. Oh man. Okay. So now, back to the issue at hand. We really seem to be finding the Republic at an incredible tipping point. And we are seeing, coming from some of the lower courts, pushback against the president's actions. The Supreme Court seems to be doing what they were put there to do. So again, the broader point before we get to the specifics of the troops in Illinois and Portland, you're a political scientist. Talk about the peril we currently find ourselves in.
Yeah, I mean, as a historian of politics, I'll put things this way. We are not, descending into fascism. We are fully smack dab in the middle of it, and the people need to organize and escalate our effective resistance. Much of that supposed opposition right now is being mediated through the Democrat Party, through Team Blue. And I'm a historian, not a soothsayer. I can't predict the future, but the one thing that I know for sure is that Team Blue is not going to come riding to our rescue. The great Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, said in The Pitfalls of Liberalism, he said, when the final confrontation does occur, of course, the liberal will be on the side of the oppressor. And we have actually seen barely token resistance, Gavin Newsom making a performative resistance to federal troops in the state of California, but then turning around and using the California Highway Patrol to carry out his own kind of Trump theatrics of state power. Don't send your Gestapo in. We want to send ours in instead. They have sat idly by as the LAPD and LA Sheriff's Department, Santa Ana Police Department, and a number of other municipalities have been running cover and carrying water for ICE, this Gestapo police force. So the relationship, sadly, between Team Blue and Team Red is that one steals while the other holds the bag. And the people are going to need to get organized because these two partners in crime, you see Obama directly co-signing for ongoing American imperialism in this moment. They're not going to help us because both parties are fully corporate owned. So the people are going to have to organize for power outside of the framework of these two political parties. That's part of the reason why I'm running for office. Last thing that I'll say, before inviting you back in to open up the question further, is that Malcolm warned us about this in 1964. Malcolm's over my shoulder at all times. I converted to Islam when I was 15 after reading his biography, and that was also my introduction into the Black liberation tradition from which I've studied and taught for decades now. Malcolm said of the Democrats, you put them first and they put you last, and that makes you a chump. That makes you a political chump. Well, I think that it's time for our people, Black people especially, who have always been at the vanguard and forefront of liberation movements, protecting what little there has been actually of representative democracy in this place. It is time for us to step up and assume a position of leadership in this moment and help the people organize for power that is not corporate controlled, that is not imperialist and warmongering in nature, and that is not, frankly, bought and paid for by Zionists as well.
You mentioned Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael,
yes, sir,
and talking about when the clash comes, the liberals will be on the side of the oppressor, and that's very, very consistent with what Dr. King told us in Where Do We Go From Here? Right. Chaos or Community. He says that. Let me paraphrase so that I can't quickly for some reason I can't put my hands on the exact page. But what he told us is that the problem with the white liberal as it relates to the Negro is that the white liberal is against the fiercity of the lash, but has never stood for equality. So he said, actually, the liberal has more in common with the oppressor than the oppressed.
100%. And Kwame Ture, to bring him back in dialogue with Dr. King in this important way, he said that the liberal is the weakest of the oppressed class, and therefore they always punch down at the oppressed and never punch up at the true fascists or the hard right. And we are witnessing that, on a daily basis. And I cannot stress this enough, especially as somebody that's trying to, kind of follow through on Malcolm's political vision, where he said in 64, I'm gonna knock on every door in Harlem and we're gonna register every Black face behind every Black door, not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, right? He explicitly said we have to organize outside of this power structure. It's not just Malcolm. It's not just Kwame Ture. It's not just Dr. King. It's not just, may she rest eternally in power, Assata Shakur, whom we recently lost. It's not just Fred Hampton or Huey P. Newton. Every last one of our Black radical revolutionary heroes understood that the Dems are ops. and that liberals are more dangerous in some fundamental ways than conservatives are. Malcolm said in 64, he said the white liberal is the most dangerous thing in the Western Hemisphere. And he said that at a time when white conservatives were hanging Negroes from trees. White conservatives were turning dogs and fire hoses on black protesters. And white conservatives were putting bullets in the brains of white voting rights activists and burying them next to Mississippi roads in shallow graves. And Malcolm said what he said, and he was not wrong. The reason is that a hidden enemy is more dangerous to you than an open enemy. And unfortunately, we have let our guard down and acted as though putting Team Blue, less blatant white supremacists or less overt white supremacists, they're very white supremacists and the outcomes they produce, that somehow did us a favor as black folks, when instead it has been pushing the political environment further and further to the right, to the point where we sit now, right? This current iteration of the Democrat Party, when Kamala Harris was running, her policy positions were to the right of Ronald Reagan by a long distance, because the Democrats have been chasing the far right with their lesser of two evils logic. And unfortunately, black folk have been keeping them afloat in this affair, because without getting 80 to 90% of the black vote, that party is dead and cannot win anything. So we should be reassessing why we as a people are keeping alive a party that has not done anything to preserve our fundamental rights, much less advance the cause of black liberation, right? They couldn't protect women's rights. They couldn't protect DEI or affirmative action or any other progressive policies. And the reason is who funds you, runs you. They are bought and paid for now by the same corporations that run Team Red. What we are witnessing is a factional fight between Blue and Team Red for control, but we are going to have to organize for the power to resist fascism, because they ain't going to do it for us.
Two things. One, I would just push back on your saying that they couldn't protect women's rights. They chose not to.
Say that.
Because the Democrats have seen these issues have been more valuable to them as issues, as in talking points, than problem solved. Barack Obama could have protected Roe. He did. He had the Senate and the House the first 2 years of his first term. Joe Biden could have done the same thing. Joe Biden ran on protecting Roe and could have protected it. But again, it's not a coincidence that some of the same social issues that Barack Obama ran on and failed to deliver on, Joe Biden ran on and failed to deliver, because again, they're more valuable to them politically as talking points. And I don't really understand this, because the value, if I'm a political candidate, I would see my value to my constituents as problem solved, not continuing rhetoric. It would be more valuable to my constituents if I were to stand before them and say, I told you I was going to protect Roe. I protected Roe. But for some reason, as Gladys Knight would say, for some ungodly reason, we can't understand why they choose that tactic.
My colleague in the UC system, Professor Dylan Rodriguez, has argued that the Democrat Party is the most effective counterinsurgency institution ever to emerge in modern history. It is the place where real change goes to die. And they seek out and co-opt every kind of true progressive, populist, socialist, or liberation-oriented movement, basically anything that is to their left, and they either try to co-opt it or completely destroy it. That's the reason why they spent more money trying to keep the Green Party off of presidential ballots than the Green Party spent on our presidential campaign in total. It's the reason why they spent more money on attack ads against myself and Dr. Jill Stein than we spent as a campaign. It is because they are deathly afraid of a true working class coalition emerging that actually, fulfills the dream of the Panthers, which was a multiracial working class coalition that was not controlled by capitalism and imperialism. And to be truthful about this, if you look at the political coalitions that could emerge in a post-Democrat world, they easily outnumber the Republican base 3-1 or 4-1. The only thing that is keeping those political coalitions from emerging is that the Democrat Party will absolutely do everything that it can to destroy anything to the left of them. And you're seeing that playing out also in real time with Zoran Mamdani. And I said of Zoran, the day after the election, because I was rooting for him, he calls himself a socialist. He's my brother in Islam, and I knew his father, Mahmoud Mamdani, and I know that Mahmoud taught him, radical politics correctly. But what I said is that party is either he's either going to break the party, which is unlikely. The party's going to break him, or he's going to leave the party, because those are actually the only options for a truly transformative politics in relation to the corporate controlled Democrats. If Bernie wasn't going to do it, Mamdani ain't going to do it.
Great point. If Bernie wasn't going to do it, Mamdani ain't going to do it. And Carol Asbaram, thank you for that super sticker. Why do some Hispanics and Asians vote for Trump? Why can we not have coalition politics?
Can I say a word on this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
We encountered this, quite a bit because actually, contrary to what people think, there were more registered Republicans that were bailing on the Republicans to vote green than there were Democrats, at least in the last two polls. Most of the people that vote for us are people that would never vote for either of those two murderous parties. But one of the things that was very consistent messaging it was not just Hispanics and Asians, but actually for white voters, it worked well with white working class Trump voters as well, is that frankly, that there are many, many people that do not see a difference between blue criminals and red criminals, and all other things being equal, they would rather pay lower taxes. So they do not have any kind of illusions about any relative moral superiority between Team Blue and Team Red. So they're just voting with their pockets. And the argument that was making sense to a lot of those voters was, hey, listen, over here, we can actually lower your income tax with one small step. We're going to stop reaching in your pocket and handing the money to Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, and Northrop Grumman, the 5 weapons manufacturers that are responsible for soaking up 60% of the U.S.'s imperialism budget, defense budget. And we're going to stop handing them your paycheck after first laundering it through foreign genocides. And that was an argument that was very appealing to a lot of not just Bernie Trump voters, people that voted for Bernie in primaries and then ended up voting for Trump in 2016, but it was a compelling argument for Trump voters as well.
Quickly touch on the you're talking about the Democrats and the Republicans, two wings on the same bird, and how the so-called Democratic liberals are co-opting African American politics, and because there are those who think they're listening to a hard radical black left, and they're really not. A number of those so-called black leftists are actually providing cover for white liberals.
Show me the one of them that's a leftist. I mean, I'm a historian. We were talking about the books that are, behind us in our respective offices. Hopefully, as professors, we occasionally read some of those books. If you go back through the annals of Black history, you're talking about people like Paul Robeson, like an actual communist. We're talking about W.E.B. Du Bois, an actual socialist. The most effective left-wing leftist movements that have ever emerged in American history were always driven by Black people, not by white leftists or white socialists. And that's the reason why the Panthers, with their explicitly anti-capitalist, Marxist-Leninist approach were so dangerous. Now, Malcolm never identified himself as a socialist. He said, I'm a Muslim and a revolutionary, but he was explicitly anti-capitalist in his orientation. And somehow, Black folks have been persuaded, like, I do not understand how this historical amnesia functions, except perhaps that it is constantly dumped upon us in the mass media. I don't understand how our people done forgot that all of our heroes told us not to trust these folks no further than we could throw them. And if we read any of these books, if we listen to our revolutionary ancestors and teachers, then we would be positioned for an independent electoral politics, as well as effective organized resistance. Because this is the other piece, is if you go to butchwareforgov.com, my campaign website, you'll see something there that you don't see in other politicians' spaces. Because I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant who's seeking elected office. But I don't do politics. I do revolution. And what you'll see there is mutual aid plus direct action plus electoral politics. And the ultimate answer to the question that you asked at the outset, which is how do we resist? We resist with the effective revolutionary tools that those ancestors gave to us. And that was the cocktail that the Panthers employed. That's the reason why that's how I'm approaching my campaign and my organizing. You have to first meet the people's needs. We are going to keep us safe. We are going to meet our needs, because this is going to get so much worse before it gets better. So we need to be organizing for mutual aid, and we need to be organizing for self-defense in our communities, because the state is not going to keep us safe. Unfortunately and sadly, we are going to keep finding Black folks like Trey Reed swinging from trees as America reverts back to its original white supremacist, explicitly violent roots. So we're going to have to organize for mutual aid, self-defense, and then we are going to have to organize for direct action. We are going to have to stand in the way of those weapons of state that are being used to destroy us. And that's going to take collective action and solidarity, but is also going to take electoral political organizing. That's why Malcolm was running those voting drives in '64 in Harlem. Malcolm said it plainly, it's the ballot or the bullet. The change is going to come through one of those mechanisms, or potentially both, depending on how they're arrayed. So that's the reason why Huey P. Newton ran for Congress not once but twice. It's the reason why Bobby Seale, another Panther leader, a co-founder of the Black Panther Party for that matter, ran for the mayor of Oakland in 1973. It's the reason why Kwame Ture, who we've referenced a couple of times already, he said, voting every 4 years is the height of bourgeois hypocrisy, but I would shed the vote, my blood for the vote, and I have, because I know that the vote is how I organize my people. So what I'm offering to our people is to use this party, which has essentially been, put in my hands to also, guide the future of what the Green Party is going to be. Use it as our instrument for effectuating that Black liberation vision. That's the offer that I'm making to the people. This is y'all's party.
Lee Ricks, thank you very much for that super sticker, and for being a member. Robert Brown, thank you for that. I was having a conversation with a very, very dear friend and mentor of mine. I won't call names because I don't just put people on out there like that. But he made the point about the dangers of the so-called Black left, and he said, when you listen to some of these people that claim to be on the Black left, when was the last time they mentioned Robeson? When was the last time they mentioned Du Bois? He said, if you're lucky, you might hear them mention Garvey, but understand Garvey came out of Booker T, not Du Bois.
Garvey was a Black capitalist. Yeah.
And he was making the same points. It's very interesting. The conversation I was having yesterday was very same, and mentioning some of the very same names that you're mentioning now. And many of these so-called Black on the Black left are actually doing no more than they're bell cows for the Democrats. They're claiming this and that, and I'm down and blah blah blah, but then they're gonna tell you to vote for Kamala. Then
I learned this the hard way during the presidential campaign when first it was AOC Pelosi, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez,
Hmm.
the new Nancy Pelosi. So AOC Pelosi first attacked, Dr. Jill and myself, then Keith Ellison. So they essentially sent out the colored wing of the Democrat Party to try to take out the most dangerous. Because I mean, we finished third in those elections. We got 53% of the Muslim vote. They perceived us as a serious and direct threat. When Keith Ellison came after us, it was 1 week after Keith Ellison and I prayed together at a mosque on the north side of Minneapolis, where we both prayed for 15 years. We've known each other for a long time. And I gave the Friday sermon at that mosque. And Keith came up and with a tear in his eye, talking about how moved he was. And he wanted to get a picture with me. And I said, "This picture is not going to get you in trouble." He said, "No, of course not. Man to man, black man to black man, Muslim to Muslim." And then a week later, when he gets his marching orders from the Democrats, masses say jump, they got to say how high. And the reality is that the Democrat Party has become a plantation where black politics are deployed in defense of white supremacist policies, right? That was what was so galling in Kamala's campaign in 24, was that she was calling on black women to co-sign for a white supremacist genocide AZA. And that's not me saying that it's a white supremacist genocide. That's Malcolm saying it's a white supremacist genocide. Malcolm said in 64 that of the state of Israel, he said that this is a white Jewish population being empowered by white imperialists to move brown Arabs off their land. James Baldwin said in 79, the state of Israel was not created for the salvation of the Jews. The state of Israel was created for the salvation of Western interests. So just like Obama, but with less talent, Kamala was essentially weaponizing blackness in identity politics in service of white supremacy. That's blackface white supremacy. It is a minstrel show from the White House. And we need to call on those Du Bois, those Robesons, those Panthers, those Kwame Toures, those Malcolms, those Assata Shakurs, in order to get ourselves out of this morass and organize for effective resistance. Because the one thing that we know for sure is that the Democrats are not going to protect us from Trump. They gave us Trump. Hillary's Pied Piper strategy in 2016 hand selected him. And then they spent tens of millions of dollars on far-right extremist candidates because they imagined that they would be easier to beat in congressional races. And here we are. That's what the ratchet effect looks like when you chase the Republicans to the right and block off any attacks from the left. Then you end up where you are now with two fascist parties, one that wears blue and one that wears red.
So now to the opening point, a judge has blocked Trump from deploying troops in Illinois for now, both Illinois and Oregon, and we know what he did in Southern California, and we know what he has promised to do in other cities such as Oakland and Memphis and in New York. Your thoughts as a historian, as a political scientist, give us your thoughts on what this is a question I'm always asking. Because I say that my job as a political scientist is not to get so caught up in the what. My job is to explain the why.
Yeah.
And also, what if I'm getting caught in the what, the what is, what signals is this or are these actions sending to you?
Yeah. So the first thing is to keep this very simple. If I had people walk away from this conversation with one phrase, it's who funds you runs you. The Democrats are incapable of offering substantive resistance to these escalations, because what would be needed in order to actually resist these federal impositions and the extension of this autocratic police state is things that would alienate the corporate capitalist donor base that feeds the Democrats. So just as they preferred to lose an election but keep their donor base in 2024 because they knew that the genocide was costing them, and their own internal polling said that they were never in position to win. I knew that when I joined the campaign. Just as that was the case, they were willing to lose and cede power to Trump rather than risk alienating the donors that were funding that genocide. That's APAC and also those weapons manufacturers. Similarly,
But wait a minute. There's another key element there.
Please.
Because Joe Biden sat in the Oval Office next to Netanyahu and said, "I am a Zionist." So I don't know that he was making any compromise. He's saying, "I'm down 10 toes in with the program," and we know that Kamala, in her book, and she loves to talk about how she walked around as a child with a little box collecting donations for so they're down with it.
Genocide Joe is a true believer. He's a dyed-in-the-wool Zionist. I couldn't agree more. Likewise with Kamala. So yeah, and it's worth mentioning that there are 10 times as many Christian Zionists as there are Jewish Zionists, and there are many Jewish anti-Zionists. Right? Go ahead. Yeah.
And I was at the convention in Chicago while those protesters, those credentialed protesters, were kept out of the convention.
Of course.
And we did not, as we heard voices from the stage talking about October 7th and how horrific it was, and we didn't hear from the other side of the conversation. They weren't allowing those people in the room.
And I'm gonna tell you what I said. Dr. Melina Abdullah and I did an Instagram live together, just to show the solidarity of some actual Black Muslim leftists in that moment, despite the fact that we were, competitors on the ballot. I said at that time is that they slaughter Palestinians like animals, and then they muzzle them like animals. They literally will not even let them speak in their own defense. So all of that is just to say, to return back now to the federal troops and all of these escalations. Trump is just seeing what he can get away with, and what the Democrats are teaching him is that he can get away with whatever the hell he pleases, because they are all they're going to do is to clutch their pearls and then clutch their purses, because they're mostly concerned about their capacity to try to utilize Trump to fundraise, right? Institutions, you asked me to think as a historian, or a political scientist, institutions are best at reproducing their own institutional existence. What the Democrat Party wants more than anything else is to survive in its current form with its current resource level. And so they're going to keep right on selling the people out. And what that means is that we're going to have to do our own community organizing and our own political organizing outside of that duopoly. Duopoly is this term that gets thrown around a lot, nowadays. Julius Nyerere, in a couple of them books behind me, the first president of Tanzania, another great, African socialist himself, he said, of course, the United States is a single party state, but with classic American extravagance, they have two of them. And that's the situation that we have. We have a factional dispute inside a single capitalist imperialist party. I know.
You are spot on. Just to not leave anything left to the imagination or ambiguous. You said that Donald Trump is pushing the envelope, and that the Democrats, to see how far he can go, and the Democrats are allowing him to do it. Where does he want to go?
He certainly, if his health holds up, will run for a third term. That part is obvious. Constitution be damned. And let's go back to where you started, because everything that I would say about where Trump is going responds to your first framing about the Constitution essentially becoming dead letter, or toilet paper in this moment. So as Black folks and as Black liberation theorists and practitioners, we cannot first and foremost get into this liberal mode of sanctifying the Constitution as some kind of flawless document. This was a flawed document that was written by slaveholders that tortured our ancestors, the majority of them.
Mm-hmm.
But what was beneficial and useful in that document, and our good brother Gerald Horne writes about the fact that the American Revolution wasn't a revolution at all, so much as it was a factional split between colonialists who feared that the English would slow down the slave trade and westward expansion into Indian territory. So that this is a fight between two colonizing powers. We don't want to reify the Constitution in the ways that liberals do. But having said that, what is of value in the American political project, which we as Black people have done more to teach America than those constitutional principles, because we're the ones that have actually stretched those constitutional principles to where they actually create representative democracy, because being counted as 3/5 of a person and fighting for personhood, struggling to liberate ourselves first in 1975 and 1775 and 1776, right? When we were accepting offers of liberation from the British in order to fight for our freedom. We were always pushing this country to have a broader, more capacious definition of freedom, and we're going to have to do that in this moment. So now what does that bring us to? Is that what is worth fighting for in this place is the idea that our individual rights and civil liberties are sacred and should be protected against autocratic political authority. What was good in that was the rejection of monarchical power and the rule by fiat. And what Trump wants to be the czar of the United States of America. Trump wants to have unfettered political authority. And he told you just the other day, he said, with respect to flag burning, yeah, we tried to protect it, but we're going to just have to get rid of freedom of speech around flag burning. And then he made up a cock and bull story about how flag burning always escalates violence and therefore we have to outlaw flag burning. Just understand that they're going to continue to enable Trump's usurpation of power until there is absolutely nothing left of representative democracy. Elections will be absolute shams, as they have been through most of American history, because our people weren't allowed to vote in them. But we are going to enter, a phase where the people essentially have no capacity whatsoever to impact our political authorities. And when I said at the beginning that we are already waist deep in fascism, things like the Gaza genocide, things like the creation of those cop cities by Democrats and the repression of anyone who would speak out against the empire in that moment, that should have taught us that we were already living in a fascist police state. It's just that the Democrats put a smile on fascism where the Republicans turned it into a scowl.
The Republicans turn it in. I was wondering if you were going to use the term martial law.
Oh yeah, that's coming very soon. That's an intermediate step. Sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
No. But when I asked where is this going, I was waiting to see if martial law was going to be part of the commentary. Because
law and curfews, without any question, will be intermediate steps. Will be signposts on the way to that. Trump has some tools that authoritarians in other places haven't had, Palantir, and the way that, all of the tech companies have essentially been complicit in surrendering all our data. George Orwell talked about the emergence of a panopticon, a constant state observer. In 1984, his novel, that was a screen on a wall. In our time, it's a screen that we keep in our pockets that's always watching us as we are watching it. And what Trump has at his disposal that no other authoritarian in human history has ever had is the greatest instrument of surveillance and death dealing that has ever existed in human history. And that is the U.S. military industrial complex in this moment.
And I want to thank Carol Asbaram. Will New York's Attorney General survive Trump's onslaught? And that was part of the open where I talked about just basically a week or so after James Comey was indicted. Donald Trump has now gone after the New York Attorney General, and who has come out and very forcefully made her point. Let's see if while we're working on the video, your thoughts on this weaponization or militarization of what once was called the Department of Justice is now called the Department of Injustice.
Yeah, I mean, let's just be clear. That's always been a weapon that has been turned against us. Bill Clinton and Joe Biden, together essentially authored the crime bill, 1994 crime bill, that was responsible for locking up a generation of my peers and the generation above me. They've been at war with us really ever since the Emancipation Proclamation itself. 13th Amendment outlawed slavery except as punishment of a crime. And as a historian, every single European colonial society in the immediate aftermath of its emancipation efforts, whenever it abolished the institution of slavery, it immediately produced criminalization of the formerly enslaved population. It's just that no one has ever done it on the scale of the United States of America, to where now 1 in 4 or 1 in 5, depending on which number you use, of the world's inmates live in this country that has 5% of the world's population, and where 1 in 3 of every stranger homicides that happens in the United States of America is when a police officer kills a civilian. So they are going to keep escalating the construction of that police state without any question.
So let's do this. Let's hear from Letitia James herself.
This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system. He is forcing federal law enforcement agencies to do his bidding, all because I did my job as the New York State Attorney General. These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost.
Well, I think
prosecutors had objected.
I think that's pretty clear, and she's right.
Yeah.
Sandra Hearn, thank you for that $10 super sticker. Greatly appreciate it. Jonathan Soul, thank you. Great conversation. Must have Bro Ware on regularly. The brother does have a schedule, so please understand I have to work within his schedule.
You know I love you, Doc. I'll be back in anytime.
And also, Jonathan is donating to your campaign as well. So we've got now this ongoing, seemingly battle of the courts, and it's interesting that that they brought the charges against Comey in the Eastern District of Virginia, because that is an incredibly conservative district. But getting back to Carol's question, will Letitia James survive Trump's onslaught? Your thoughts, Butch?
I mean, so we know that Donald Trump both hates and fears Black women, especially, and he finds it, personally galling that a Black person would ever be in a position to judge him or do him harm. And that is only multiplied if that Black person happens to be a woman as well. So he's going to do everything that he can. And it is, I, liberal media keeps calling these stress tests of democracy. The stress test was failed in 2000, right? When the Supreme Court, did what it did at that point. We've been collapsing ever since. So I do fear that he's going to be successful in his efforts, to prosecute both Comey and James, because what he wants is exemplary punishments on anyone who has the audacity to take a shot at the king.
I will provide a little different perspective to Carol's question.
And if yours is more optimistic, then I hope you're right.
Well, I don't want to put it in the optimistic, pessimistic category. Let me just say that the career prosecutors the career prosecutors refused to bring the cases because they didn't have enough evidence. Donald Trump has now appointed a tax attorney to handle this, a tax attorney who has zero experience, went to the wrong courtroom, sat on the wrong side of the court, handed the judge in the Comey case, handed the judge 3 indictments that were in conflict with each other because she didn't know what she was doing. I think I know Comey's coming in hard with his A team. I know Attorney General Letitia James, she could basically represent herself here, but we know that a attorney that represents themselves has a fool for a client. She's coming in hard. So this is where I think, as the system, as with the OJ trial, as the system was forced to go through its paces, that, and both Comey and James are capable of forcing, both of Comey's kids are prosecutors or former prosecutors, that they will force the system to go through its paces, and at the end of the process, I believe they will prevail.
I hope you're right. All I'll say is that there's two things. The first is that we are in the strip it down and sell it for parts stages of the collapse of American empire. That's number one. Everything that's not bolted down is for sale. And that also means that we are in the kangaroo court phase of American empire as well.
Yeah, but Trump ain't even bringing a kangaroo to the kangaroo court. He's bringing a chimpanzee.
We're that's not bad. I'm gonna give you some credit for that one. But the point is that your premise for me is rooted in yesterday's logic, which is that facts and evidence actually make a difference. But what we're finding time and time again is that facts, evidence, and precedent have made no difference with respect to the Supreme Court. Some of the lower courts are holding, but we're going to see more increasing dramatic instances of lower court judges being locked up for decisions that the Trump administration doesn't like. Like, listen, I study African history, where colonial states basically handed off power to corrupt regimes that would do their dirty work for them. I've seen every manner of chicanery, scam, and hustle in order to keep imperialism and white supremacy in place. And actually, if I can just say this, the Democrat Party actually functions exactly the same way that native administrations functioned in colonial Africa, now that I think about it, because they essentially put a black face on the white supremacist state and cause us to interact as though these are indigenous authorities, when actually they're bought and paid for by colonial structures. And the big mistake that Letitia James made is that she essentially tethered her freedom to doing the work that the Democrat Party wanted her to do, frankly. don't get me wrong, Trump, is a criminal in every conceivable way. But Trump is not baseless when he says that there were a series of politically motivated prosecutions against him. Russiagate was a complete and total fraud. That was something that was completely and wholly fabricated out of whole cloth by the Democrat regime and then pumped by liberal media throughout. So when Letitia James sides with, Team Blue genocide, it's not that she deserves it, but she shouldn't be surprised when the same weapons that she's wielding are then turned back towards her.
And to your point about Russiagate being a complete fabrication, you are absolutely right. And one of the elements of this that rarely gets discussed is this whole thing about Russia hacking was empirically proven to be false. It defied the laws of physics.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I mean, and it's because the same corporations that own the political parties own the media companies, right? So MSNBC is going to run cover and carry water for the Democrats no matter what happens. Fox News is going to run cover and carry water for the Republicans no matter what happens. And we're in 1983, 50 media companies controlled 90% of the media environment. That number is down to 5 in 2025. We have 4 Zionist billionaires that essentially control the internet, with Meta, with Twitter. I'll never call it X. Malcolm keeps that. Musk can't have it. With Twitter, with Bezos and Amazon, and then I'm forgetting now the other major social media platform. Oh, yeah, TikTok, exactly. Another Zionist now running that one. So all of that is to say that their thought control over us is the thing that is driving the shallowness of the political conversation, and gang between Team Blue and Team Red. And if we are going to protect ourselves, it's not going to come from inside that echo chamber of corporate controlled media and corporate controlled politics.
And it's important for people to know that Bill Binney, who at one point was the director of NSA IT, tested the theory of whether or not the amount of data that was claimed to have been hacked, which is a technical term, folks, which would claim to be hacked, that it was physically impossible to download that amount of data over the internet. The more plausible story is, as it relates to those emails and things, it was an inside job. It was a disgruntled member of the DNC that gained physical access to the server, put a thumb drive or other type of external recording device onto the server and down. That means somebody had to walk into the DNC office and do it, not hack through the internet. Folks, it's hard to argue with the physics behind the whole thing. One more.
We've traced the call, and it's coming from inside the house. And if I could just say, just to underline that point, meanwhile, the Zionist entity that shall be remain nameless is actually hacking all of our. It's actually observing much of our data. It's actually corrupting our politics. It's actively buying off our politicians.
Oh, was that AIPAC? Is that the name I'm not supposed to mention? AIPAC?
Israel. Israel is a name of honor in the Bible and the Quran, so I never like calling that Zionist entity Israel. But Israel is doing the kind of influence peddling and foreign control that Russia is being fear-mongered about, right? We actually have, Israeli, like the Israeli Knesset, the Israeli parliament, actually wrote the campus guidelines that are being followed in the University of California system and in the Ivy League about prohibiting encampments, about anti-Zionist speech as anti-Semitism, and all of those things. Like, they're literally being dictated to us by a foreign country, while the Democrats are, saying, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz reference there. Look over here instead. Yeah.
Two quick questions, and I know your time is very tight. Well, first of all, Ramplesense says, Dr. Ware, if you want to win Democrats' votes, you have to campaign in the churches. Your thoughts there?
I couldn't agree more. And a lot of my contact has been with Christian anti-Zionist organizations, and then Black churches in the Oakland area, especially. So that's where we're starting to do that work. And let me just be clear, like, we're not leaving any voter unturned. We're going after all of that, and all we need actually is for the primary on June 2nd of 2026. If we're able to, it's a top two primary, jungle primary. There's no partisan primary. So the top two candidates will face off against each other between June and November. If we can get to that second position, which only took 17% of the vote the last time around, then that is going to create a one-on-one between me and whichever Zionist, imperialist Democrat is running to be the new Gavin Newsom. It's looking like it might be Katie Porter, but her campaign is falling apart right now because of some of her media performances have been so tragic. So all of that is just to say we are aggressively, working in our community, but then across working class communities as well, because we got a real clean shot at the champ's chin.
Dr. Bilal Butch Ware, thank you so much for your time. California Green Party candidate for governor. Thank you so much for your time and for that analysis. And I do look forward to having you back.
Yeah, anytime. And if I could just throw in a word, butchwareforgov.com, and that's the number 4 in that. And then you can follow me on all social media platforms at Butchware.
You were mentioning the minstrelsy, and I wrote a piece a while back, which I will send you if I hadn't sent it to you already. The dangers of minstrel diplomacy, talking about Kamala going to CARICOM and Hakeem Jeffries going to CARICOM.
Jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. Jump down, turn around, pick a bale of hay.
Well, I just call it Yazzaballs. Hey, man, thank you. Have a great weekend. Greatly appreciate it.
Stay blessed. Take care.
You do the same, man. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, folks. Want to thank you. Thank Dr. Ware for joining me today. Thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. New episode Monday. And former UN rapporteur and current international law expert Alfred de Zayas is going to be back with us. Alfred de Zayas is going to join us to talk about this Nobel Prize fiasco, as well as this so-called 20-point peace plan. So we'll be rapping about that with one of the experts. Alfred de Zayas is going to join us. Please follow, subscribe, leave a review, share the show. Follow us on social media. All the links are below in the show description. And remember, this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all Monday. Alfred de Zayas is going to join us. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a blessed remainder of your day and weekend. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.